Hello and welcome to another episode of Can't Stop the Growth. I'm your host, Chad Peterman, and today we have a very special guest on the podcast to talk all things leadership from the West Coast. However, in doing my research, I did find out that their office is on Indiana Avenue. As I saw that, I was like, you got to be kidding me. But without further ado, would like to welcome the president of Mainstream Electric Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing, Elaine Damschen. Welcome to the podcast, Elaine.
Thank you so much, Chad. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Excited to have you on here, fellow Nexstar member and someone who is definitely out front as it relates to all things best practices. And really just excited to chat with you. If you want, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about kind of your company, what you're doing, different things of that nature, where you are, all of the essentials, and then we'll jump into it.
Okay, sounds great. So Mainstream Electric Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing is a 21-year-old company. My husband and I, Todd, started it from scratch. And when we originally started the business, we were in the electrical field only. And that was the case for 15 years. And then 6 years ago, we added HVAC. And 5 years, we added plumbing. And now HVAC and plumbing are neck and neck for revenue, and electrical is actually, ironically, our smallest department. Got our start in a little industrial park, kind of tucked away and hidden in Post Falls, Idaho. And a piece of property came available along the interstate in Spokane Valley. So we moved over to the Washington side about 18 months ago. And it gave us the space it's quadrupled the space, and it gave us the space to have some incredible growth over the last 18 months.
Awesome. Yeah, I was doing my research and I was like, this says they're in Washington. I could have swore for the life of me they were in Idaho. But as I looked at the map, it's very close to Idaho if you're familiar with your West Coast geography. Well, so I want to bring this up as you tell us your origin story, simply because we have something in common that I want you to elaborate on a little bit. Tell us how Todd, your husband, broke the news to you that he was going to get into the electrical field. What were you doing what were you maybe doing at the time, or what were you involved in? And then I'll tell you why that's so ironic that's your origin story.
Okay. Well, so to back up a little bit before that, so Todd was in the Idaho Air National Guard, and he worked on the Wild Weasel fighter jet, troubleshooting the radar system for the F-4s. And he decided he was going to become an electrician. And I believe why this is significant is because that particular year, two things happened. Number one, I had birthed our identical twin baby boys. And I was also a school teacher back then. I taught middle school, and I taught half-time. I made $10,000 on my contract that year for teaching a few periods. And Todd came home and he just said, I am going to become an electrician. I'm leaving my full-time job with the Guard, which was really well paying. And he says, I'm going to become an apprentice electrician for $6 an hour. And of course I wanted to freak out, but he said, I really need you to trust me on this because I'm thinking about our future in the long term.
Yeah, what I think if the biggest thing for me there is just the power of the support in a marriage, and how awesome that is that you guys supported each other through that. And the reason I say that it's ironic is because my dad didn't enter the trade during the same year that my mom gave birth to me, but he did say that he was starting his own company in the 3 months before my mom gave birth to me. So I always joke, I don't know how that conversation went. And after being married for almost 5 years, I don't know that I'd ever want to have it. But they're still happily married today. So everything worked out. But just an amazing story, especially with the success that you guys are experiencing out there as well. Obviously a big part of your success probably has to come with growing your own people, and I know that that's a big focus probably for you guys, and some of the stuff that I see you posting about, and as it relates to leadership. And one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on here is to kind of pick your brain about your thoughts on that. So as it relates to your company, what are some of the things that you guys are doing to kind of grow your people? I noticed that it said on your website that we'll train anybody. And what are you guys doing as it relates to training, both technical and from a leadership perspective?
I'll start with technical. After a lot of years of, well, I'm going to say we have both. We hire folks with experience, and we're also looking to grow our own people. And so our best success actually really comes from asking other staff members to, who do you know out in the trades who wants to either get into the trade or who's already licensed, who wants to come over to a great company. That's really where we got our biggest traction this particular year. But as far as growth, we have this philosophy that we can teach technical, which we do. A lot of what we work on here is personal growth and personal development, because ultimately it's the mirror that we're holding up, and it's us, our own selves, who creates the results. And without personal growth, there won't be professional growth, if that makes sense. And it's super high level and vague. And so how do we accomplish that? It's lots of one-on-one conversations. It's a lot of focus on human connection. And then we have a really awesome operations manager, Kelly, and plumbing manager, David, who does a lot of the one-on-ones and building career paths and talking about where do folks see themselves in the future. So I guess that's a dual answer.
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. And one of the things I want you to elaborate on, because I think this is often missed, and I can, I can definitely say that we missed it for a long time until probably a couple of years ago, when we really put a focus on the one-on-one meetings. I'm a big believer, and I always say there isn't a whole lot outside of process and procedure that gets covered in a Monday morning service meeting. But where the rubber meets the road is in a one-on-one conversation. Can you tell us a little bit more about kind of the importance you guys place on the one-on-ones? You mentioned career paths as maybe something you tackle. What are the other things that you're tackling in those one-on-one conversations?
Well, again, I keep using the words heart and human connection. I just don't believe in our company that anything can happen without that basis first and foremost, because it's a place where trust is built, and also a place where we can be vulnerable with each other, to actually share what's happening in our lives. And so I would say it's talking about personal things first and foremost, and then leading into career paths. And I think one thing that we continue to learn here is it's really important. We have to give our people options. Just like we say with our clients out in the field, let's give them 4 to 6 options. We might not have that many options, but I think it's important for our staff to choose their career path. And I'll talk about some of the mistakes we make here is sometimes we'll identify or maybe see potential in someone, and we think that that's the path that they want. And so we'll just move them in the position. And even though during the one-on-one, we ask them, hey, do you want to be the client resolution person? And they're like, yep, it's perfect for me. But then when we move them without posting the job, having them actually choose and go through the action, then they end up leaving sooner. So it's a little bit also a dual answer. Here's what we want to do better, and then here's what we've done in the past that hasn't really worked.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think you hit the nail on the head there with giving people options. You may hire them in for one role. The big running joke here at our company is that accounting is full of what they term themselves the call center rejects. Because I think that there's like 3 or 4 people that started in the call center and found out that I don't know if this is for me, but accounting looks fun. And what they've turned out to be is just, awesome, awesome employees in the call or in accounting. But we hired them for call center. And we would have never known that had we not kind of sat down with them and understood, okay, well, they don't want to be a call center manager. They want to maybe even work somewhere different. And I think that comes with what you said at the beginning is really hiring for character. And when you find someone with character, you may get them in somewhere, but really just having them on your team is the most important part.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other part to having these conversations is what I've been really sensitive to lately is that first starting with me, of course, that we listen to our people to understand and not listen to be understood and like defend our position on why we think something should happen. And we make those mistakes still today. I make those mistakes, and that just kind of seems to be my intuitive nudge the past couple of weeks is really listen to understand. Don't listen to respond to be understood.
Yeah, that's really good. A lot you've mentioned a couple of times in here, which I think is definitely indicative of the type of leader that you are. But you've mentioned a lot when we think of leadership. I think it's oftentimes thought of as telling people what to do and giving out directives and orders and process procedure. But you've talked a lot about kind of looking internally. Just your last comment about listening to understand, and really looking internally to understand if we care about that person, making that human and heart connection. Tell us a little bit more about that and kind of the importance that you guys place on that at Mainstream.
Sure, I would love to. And this comes from something that happened in the past and which led me and us to where we are today is about 3 years ago, we had a really strong electrical department, high average ticket. They'd been with Mainstream between 5 and 9 years. And we had like 6 out of the 8 exit within a week. So thank goodness for Nexstar. And that if you imagine business like a Parthenon and we have those pillars, thank goodness that we had HVAC and plumbing to hold us up while the electrical had gone down. And I mean, it was a painful experience and it took a couple years to process. And when things like that happen, all we have to do is hold up the mirror. We could have had our fingers pointed and said, well, they did this or they didn't do that. And I just have learned over the years that absolutely, if I own everything and I'm responsible for everything, I have to have a part in what happened. And after a couple years of reflecting, we talk about character and we talk about integrity. So integrity, as we learn in Nexstar, is when our thoughts match our words, match our actions. And I think in business, we talk about integrity and we're looking for people who aren't going to steal from us or outright steal from the clients and those sorts of things. But what I learned was integrity is even something as small as our thoughts. And what I identified in myself is that, yes, these folks were bringing in a lot of revenue, but I didn't exercise my voice in speaking up, and that I had a lack of integrity because I was pretending that I actually liked this group of people together. They had their own subculture going on and I didn't speak up. So I was thinking something different, like I don't really like this group of people, but I was acting different to their face. So even something as small as not having my thoughts match my words and my actions, even though I felt like, oh, they don't really know. I mean, thoughts are energy, and I really had to own that. And so my lesson moving forward, going internally, is it always starts with me. And in everything that happens, I have to go inward and say, how have I contributed to this in some way?
That's a fantastic point, and definitely wrote down integrity is as small as our thoughts. And I think that as any leader, it's oftentimes, extremely easy to point the finger. But it's when we take ownership of what's happening, even though it may not be our fault. Could you have prevented those, technicians from leaving or creating their own subculture? No, but you probably could have done things, or as you reflect back on it, probably could have done things in the way of uncovering that faster, or there's all kinds of things. But I think that as a true leader, you have to be willing to look internally, and as you said, is hold up the mirror and what have I done to contribute, and where can I contribute in a positive light moving forward.
Yeah.
I think is something extremely important.
And also the belief, I mean, a couple more things to that point is that um, assuming positive intent is, I guess, another form of integrity. I mean, I could assume negative intent behind closed doors, but then come out with a smiling face, and that's a lack of integrity. And so now to really challenge my own thoughts and say, hey, I'm just going to assume positive intent. And even today, we had a salesperson come in completely unexpected, and has left me a little bit reeling. And as I hold up the mirror, I can say today, 3 years later, after the other big event, that I know that I've absolutely done everything that I can, and that that's an option that they chose. And it's a much better place to be as a leader, because now I can just move forward and um, keep going and not have the emotion attached to it,
Yeah.
which can be
Outs-
debilitating.
Oh, absolutely. And the one thing I thought of when you were saying that, that I think relates really nicely is that, true empowerment comes through ownership. And if you are, and we hear it all the time in our industry of can't find people, held hostage by the plumber who's the rock star, and, the HVAC technician. But, taking your strategy of really looking in the mirror and saying, what can I do to affect this outcome? Or what can I do to create a positive result? At the end of the day, if things don't work out, well, they weren't meant to work out. But if you're taking a negative spin onto the situation, then you may be to blame for some of the negative things that happen.
Definitely. And then the second thing I was going to say, one action, as long as I'm in town and I'm here, like I work really hard to be at the office sometime between 7 and 7:30 when all the guys are back in. Like I'm still pretty hands-on with the technicians, and not like loading up the van or anything like that, but it's the school teacher in me. Like, how do I make eye contact with every single staff member every single day and ask them how they're doing, how their wives are doing, children are doing? Um, and that gives me peace in knowing that I'm, no matter how big we get, I want to know who's on our staff. But also what has happened is I've committed myself to that is, even though I do own the business, like I feel like now I work for them. Like I have to be at work, not because they expect me to, but because to me in my company, visible leadership is super important.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree with that. I take a very similar approach. One of our five core values is lead ourselves, and you mentioned at the very outset of looking internally, and who are you going to become to lead your people? And so, yeah, that visible leadership I think is incredibly important, especially in our industry where there's a disconnect between the office and the field. And I think that to me, that's always been a quote unquote, you could look at it as an obstacle, or we could look at it as well, shoot, it's a lot easier to, want to show visible leadership because they can't see me. So when can they see me? Let me be here for them,
Yeah.
which I think is important.
Yeah.
As it relates to that, you mentioned a few things about showing that visible leadership. I want to dive into, simply because I get asked this question a lot, And so obviously working with family presents its definite fair share of challenges. But what do you attribute to? And I watched your video, and so I kind of have a little bit of background on that, which I think is super cool. And I'm definitely going to steal that idea. Jared, pay attention. Look it on their website. Check it out. Uh, but what do you guys attribute to being able to work together successfully and making that such a success there?
There's always that pre-story, and truly going back, my dad was a contractor. I saw how hard he worked, and I was like, I'm never going to marry a contractor. And here I am. So to Todd's defense, he would say, well, I didn't become a contractor until after we got married. But I really came on board kicking and screaming. I was pretty resistant. I was probably in the way of our business growth. And so I'm always, measuring that and examining myself about that. But what really got us on the same page, like in a really good place, was about 6 years ago. Todd was like, I cannot do with this resistance anymore. And he bought us 2 tickets to Tony Robbins' Business Mastery 1, flew us to West Palm Beach, and said, this just has to work. And it was and has been life-changing. And we have been followers of Tony Robbins and attended many, many of his live events, because he teaches us to examine and explore internally in ourselves and how we directly create results in our own world.
That's awesome. Yeah. I've never been to it. I want to go sometime, but haven't had the fortune of going. One of the things that you mentioned in the video that I wanted you to talk a little bit more about, and I'm sure this, along with Tony Robbins, probably plays, if you probably read some of the same books here, but you called yourself the integrator while Todd was the visionary. Tell us a little bit more about that relationship and how that works in those particular roles.
I am laughing out loud a little bit, because I've done that role out of necessity. Mm-hmm. And so the other thing that really has impacted us is the book Traction, right? Yep. And the understanding that it takes 2 people plus your village to really make it work. And so Todd has really been the visionary, and back in the day, up until 18 months ago, I have been the integrator. And so it's just picking up the pieces and being that safety net. And I do believe that the devil is in the details. And so really paying attention to the details and being really mindful of that. Now that I have an operations manager, and she kills it 1,000 times better than I do. So I really laugh, because she's the true integrator now. And I also act as a visionary in that.
Awesome. That's great.
But to respect what each other's strengths are, and it not to put each other down for what we can or can't do in a role in life, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you said you played the role of integrator out of necessity. Do you consider yourself more of a visionary or an integrator naturally?
Naturally, as I've discovered. So 2 things. I'm actually a higher level visionary than Todd. I mean, I work on board of directors and, really involved in the community and those types of relationships. That really is the seat that I belong in and that I'm the happiest in. But up until that point, how we do the color code in Nexstar, I actually had taken the test and shown up as a red, but really haven't been that happy in that role. And about 18 months ago at a Nexstar event, I had myself ask myself, hey, how come I have emotional intensity when I come to work? And to have the realization that the other 5 times I've taken color code, I actually turned up as a white. And to have the aha moment that I'd been pretending to be a red so I could keep up with Todd. So it's only been about 18 months where I've really settled into my true nature and what my strength is in our company.
Yeah. And I think that your point there is hits me kind of square within the eyes because I've been on kind of a similar path as kind of discovering myself and where that true role is. And it's it's only natural as you're smaller. You do everything. You got a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You're integrating, you're visionary, you're doing it all. And I think the one thing that I've discovered and would like to hear your thoughts on this, but when you discover what your true role is, and you unlock so much growth potential in the company.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys seen that?
Oh my
Uh,
gosh,
yeah,
100%. I mean, we have this true integrator she is a total rock star. And I mean, last year we had a 67% growth in revenue growth in our company. And this year, assuming we hit our targets, we'll have another 78% growth in our company. And I mean, it's exactly as demonstrated as what we've discussed. Once we go internal and unlock that potential within ourselves, it shows up in the world and in our business.
yeah, absolutely. And I've noticed the same thing. It's almost there's no for visionaries, and I don't mean to speak for a fellow visionary like yourself, but there's no better feeling than finding a really good integrator that can take all of that stuff off your plate. Like just let you. It's like setting you free. Like okay, perfect. I'm just going to come up with ideas and help in that respect. And because what I found myself doing as an integrator is like a yeah, I don't even know what you like imitator integrator. I don't even know if that's the term, but we're going to use it. Imitator integrator is like I did more harm than good because I never followed through with anything.
Yeah. I can follow through on things, but I suffer from analysis paralysis and it just takes me a really long time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that for all leaders, I think that especially as you start and then you see, that growth and you start to hit it is understanding who you are as a person. And whoever you are is perfectly fine. But I even went to the length of this year. At the start of this year, I just shared this with my team, is that I wrote my own job description. Like I wrote, okay, this is the stuff that I'm going to focus on. And anything else that is outside of my lane, I'm going to defer to whoever's in charge of that. And and I actually went to those people and said, here's the deal. This is what I'm focusing on. You're in charge of this. You run with it like tomorrow. If you need my opinion, glad to give it, but I'm not going to give I'm not going to give any unsolicited advice.
Yeah.
And I think as you grow, you kind of form those lanes, but it's also easy as you grow to continue to cross over those lanes, which just creates utter chaos.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah, agreed. That's fantastic. What do you see yourself? What are kind of obviously you guys are experiencing some phenomenal growth there. What do you see as those things on the horizon that give you maybe a little bit of anxiety? Like, okay, I'm going to have to definitely get in front of this and things of that nature because growth like that can definitely present its fair share of challenges. You're moving fast. What do you see on the horizon that are things that you're wanting to get ahead of?
I think first and foremost, what I want to get ahead of is I can be really caught up in my head that yes, I do work for my staff but also to stay out in front and lead. And what that to me means is visible leadership, but also controlling the narrative. And what I mean by that is I don't think people are having narrative that's negative. I believe that as we grow, it's super important for us to over communicate the direction that we're going in. So, because if we're not having those conversations and not sharing what's going on within our executive team or our leadership team, that it's easy for people to make up their own narrative if we're not providing it. And how to do that in the most effective way, that and staying out in front, that gives me a little bit of anxiety. Recruitment, I mean, the number of calls that we turn away, that makes me nervous. And Yeah, it's just growth is an uncomfortable experience. But also finally, personally, how do I, in a sense, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, if that makes, so that we can still move forward and not be paralyzed.
Absolutely. Yeah, the one thing that definitely all three of those things are things that I'm sure all leaders have felt or went through or are currently going through. One of the things that's really helped us as we have grown and stuff is 100% agree with you is over communicate. As leaders, as owners, you often have this grand plan, especially as a visionary, got this grand plan bouncing around in your head, and everything makes sense to you. Like, oh, yeah, duh, we're doing this. Like, it's fine. Don't worry about it. But yet, no one on the outside knows what you're thinking. And so, my brother and I read this book in 2016 called Double Double, where we crafted our vivid vision, if you will. And so, since 16, yeah, I think this will be number 5 that we write, or rewrite, I guess I should say. But we basically crafted, it's a 15-page document that basically says, here's where we expect the company to be in 3 years. And so, as a leader, and as it relates to communication and being out front and leading, as well as working for your people, I think it's extremely important to show them where you're heading, what opportunities lie ahead, so that they know that growth is a good thing, because it's going to get us to where we want to be, not more headaches, more issues, more this, more that. Where you said, they may be making up their own, they have to make up some sort of narrative if you don't give them one
Yeah.
to believe in.
Yep.
What are you guys doing on the? You mentioned recruitment as well. I think that's a hot topic for everybody, really in the trades, and as I talk to even more businesses outside of the trades, really everywhere. Just finding people. Everybody's got either pent up demand or whatever it may be due to COVID and other circumstances. What are you guys doing out there to get out in front of that recruitment piece?
So a couple things. One, again, is going to our staff and um, keeping the narrative in front of them that I think the best candidates come to us when they're referred. And so we do have that for a journeyman technician. We pay them $500 a quarter per person that they bring for 10 quarters. So they end up with $5,000 as long as both are still there. So we have that out. That's been really successful especially on our plumbing side and our electrical side. We put that out, and then we just have invested in a full-time recruiter. And so we just have somebody just pounding the pavement, 8 hours a day. And we're just working to, turn over every rock and stone to bring people in.
Yeah, absolutely. Both those things are phenomenal things. The recruiter, I think, is a piece that most miss. They always, I even missed it. Like, we didn't add a recruiter until last year, and now we have 4. I'm like,
Oh,
how in
cool.
God's name did we ever survive without one, much less the rest of them? And I'm like, that is the key to me. That is one of the keys. And people are like, well, how do you pay them? This, that, and the, I go, it doesn't matter. Just get them on your team. Let them feel the anxiety of the service manager and the owners and the call center people of not having enough people, and they'll go find you people.
Yep. And I think with that too, right? We strive to have the best paid people in the area, from call taking to dispatch to warehouse to technicians, with really healthy performance plans, and as well as the employer of choice with great culture. I just, in my mind every day, I visualize a magnet, and that will have an ability to start attracting people. And I would say on some level, obviously with the growth that we've had, that's been working. Just got to keep doing it and expand on that.
Absolutely. And to kind of tie two thoughts together that you've brought up, and as it relates to culture, I think one thing that many of people can do that you hear complain about there not being good people out there is, as you've said a couple of times, it's time to look in the mirror. It's
Mhm.
time to understand, would you be a place that someone would want to even come and work? Like there's good people out there, and we can find them. But you also have to be a destination that people want to come, or else, it's like, yeah, no one would ever want to work for you.
Yeah.
But what are those things that you're doing, that are attracting people, and just really, really cool stuff. I think a lot of people can definitely learn, from some of the things that you've talked about as it relates to recruiting, because we're all looking for good people to build that culture.
And we're still not perfect, but we're striving to be better every day. So,
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things you got to continually remind yourself of is there's things that'll fall through the cracks. There's tough times, but as long as you are pointed in the right direction, wanting to make an impact, you're going to fall on the good side of things, more times than not, for sure. Well, Elaine, it has been an absolute pleasure talking with you. I've got as usual on these things. I've got a full page of notes. I mentioned on air that we are going to steal the video idea from you, which is a fantastic idea. So thank you for that. And I guess as it relates to leadership, what's one thing that you'd like to leave the listeners with as something to think about, or something that you've discovered here recently that's really helped you out?
that's a good question. What comes to mind is the question, a question that I live by. When was the last time you did something for the first time, personally? And that is a question that I keep in front of me. And oh gosh, I probably first heard that question when I was 30. So it was over 20 years ago. And so not just with like travel or whatever, but different things in a day or any way to put myself in situations where I'm uncomfortable so I can, I don't want to say force the growth, but be intentional about my growth. That's the first thing. And then professionally, I mean, heart and human connection. I've spent a lot of years in my leadership roles feeling bad that that was my focus, and that maybe wishing I was someone else who was such a driver or more numbers focused. I can do that too. But really to come to the realization that I really am blessed with the strength and people and processes first. I listened to your podcast with John Conway, and I wholeheartedly believe in that. People and processes first, and profit comes next.
100%. Thank you for that. That's I've written that down, and it's probably something good for me. My wife says that I'm fairly boring, so that may be some good advice for me to take up. But I enjoy it. But no, I think you've really pointed out some really great things that I think all leaders can take and learn from. For me, my takeaway from our conversation today was to hold up the mirror. It was to understand what part you play in your own success, what part you have the ability to play in the success of others. And to me, when we pull up that mirror, we take a look and we understand what impact we're going to have on others by examining our own actions. I think that's where the true empowerment and the true effect can be realized. And so I'm so grateful that you shared that today, for the listeners, and I'm so grateful you shared that with me. We all can be reminded, probably on a daily basis, of how our actions affect those around us. Excited again that you took a little bit of time to share your perspective on leadership with us. That is all that we have for this episode. As always, keep growing out there. Go help somebody, show them that you care, and the world will become a better place. Thanks again, Elaine.
Awesome. Thanks, you guys.